Hello and welcome everyone for the first episode of the Culture Nerd Podcast After Dark series. This week we are going to be discussing the indie comic Tank McGreggor, the first volume, and the Mechanical Menace, written and drawn by Rey Garza, and we got Mark Bernal from Lesser Known Comics here as well to talk about the project. This is 100% going to be our After Dark series, so there's going to be a lot of language, a lot of dirty talk, so hide your kids. Do not let them listen if you don't want them to have some aspect of their childhood ruined. So let's jump right into it. All right, here we are. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wait, it's afternoon for me. Never mind. It's good afternoon.
It's 10 a.m. for me, though.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may happen to be in this wonderful wide world.
I was wondering when you were going to throw a Truman Show reference in these shows.
Eventually, we have to get to it eventually. Speaking of the Truman Show, which is all things high science fiction, the Tank McGregor world felt so flushed out, even for this intro to it. I love the way that you set up the world. How long has Tank McGregor been rattling around in your brain?
I mean, it's been rattling around in my brain for about 5 years now. The comic itself, I started it like four years ago, 4.5 years ago. Before that, it only lived as like doodles, and you can see in the back of the book, I have like a little sketchbook of like how it started and how it ended up. So there's a lot of like preliminary, like this just science fiction sort of like bounty hunter guy, and I would go through different iterations. So it really just lived as drawings and doodles, and eventually I just decided to put a story to it. So yeah, it's been about 4 or 5 years.
Goggles' version of him feels like the Tintin version, which would be great for 10-year-olds. This book, while nothing in the book is lascivious, it talks about, the future that is here to come, where, relationships will be with organic things and inorganic things, much like we all have relationships with our inorganic devices now. When through your doodlings, when did you get involved in thinking about like transhumanism stuff? Because it is talked about in the book in one way, but you're dealing with it in lots of other aspects. When did that when did that reference start coming over in the Tank McGregor world?
It's hard to say because I didn't write the book start to finish in like a pre-production phase and then get to work on it. It was sort of like I did 15 initial pages, and the 15 pages were just dialogue, mainly just like jokes and dad jokes and fart jokes. And then like I started putting an actual story to it once I was drawing it. Somewhere along the line, like halfway through drawing the whole book, like I'd say like page 50, it just sort of like clicked, like, oh shit, like the connection is obvious, and I didn't even know it yet. And it's got to be this person has to be this, and like the whole transhumanism thing just kind of like was born naturally, organically through the storytelling. I had never had like an overall plan of like, and this is what's going to happen, So it just happened very organically as I went along.
It's interesting that in your future world, just robots alone are sexy. Just the metal, because that was one of the things, that was a running joke that I thought was very funny. Because if it doesn't look like a fleshy lady to me, well, I'm not going to judge that. It's a robot. But the moment people see the robot, they get so excited. Everyone's like, oh, that's a sex robot over there. What are the holes in the back of the robot? Are those for needs, or are those like steam vents? Because as soon as I saw those, I was like, oh, okay, like the robot can work with any kind of alien.
Well, there's exactly. The robot can work with any kind of alien. Some people might not want like a frontal entry.
Sure. See, that's what I knew.
I mean, they're like.
I thought it was a plug, so I was like, "That's how they charge." But Michael saw it as a sex thing. So,
if a kid asks me,
it could be a plug.
Yeah, if a kid asks me, it's a plug. If you guys ask me, it's an orifice. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, it was sort of like the whole like, oh, these things can probably be interchangeable. Like you could probably order a custom robot and have that hole be anywhere you want, you know?
In the comic book, they talk about sometimes robots become sentient, and it's a real big problem that we then have to deal with as a society. Was the robot who's getting high on the streets with his shockers in his hand? Is he a sentient being, or are robots so stressed out in the future they as well need to medicate themselves to deal with reality?
Yeah, man, he's just addicted to Fisk. He's just I think he's sentient. You know, it's one of those characters where like he's so like on the side that I didn't really like have a whole backstory for him. To me, he really is just like a sort of like drug addict to sort of establish that there is this drug that is specific to robots, and God knows what it could be, but you have to plug it onto yourself, and it's very electrical, and it just affects him like it does everyone else. But yeah, sure, man. Like I think maybe that guy in the past was like some businessman, and like the market crashed in this comet that he was working, and it just like got to him. He lost his wife, he lost his kids. At one point, he replaced his body, and he sold little parts of him, like little by little, just to pay for this drug addiction that he has. There, it's got a backstory.
That's very similar. That's very close to Tom Cruise in Minority Report, who was also a drug addict who lost his wife and kids. So that's usually what leads to those way.
I should write an entire separate book on just that guy.
Listen, that's a lot of world building for you to do, but oh boy, to see like that, like to see what his rock bottom was, because like, oh boy, yeah, I was very intrigued by that. I was also very intrigued with who is Gorbus the Conqueror? Is this like a thing that's known to everyone in the galaxy? Is this like a book that people read, or is this like the guy who was running everything right up until all of this?
Gorbus the Conqueror is a sort of Sun Tzu of the galaxy. And instead of the art of war, he has the science of war. And he was this super bloodthirsty, incredible warrior, you know, never lost a battle. He always thought that he was going to die in battle someday. But just through circumstance, he lived to a very old age. He just never died. So he decided to start writing his memoirs and everything he knows. And those little excerpts you see in the beginning of the book, beginning of every chapter, are just excerpts from his book, The Science of War, which may or may not exist.
Oh, real, again, wonderful things, all of those. I have to say that my wonderful host over here is you can't bring up a movie to him. You have to caveat everything you say to him, because he will give you every piece of information that he has received up until this moment. So you have to be like, I'm real excited for the Flash movie. Don't tell me anything, nothing at all. I don't want to know anything, because he'll just tell you everything that he knows about it.
Yeah, it's a problem. Ever since we were kids. One thing that I really liked, I noticed it just kind of in the first few pages, but you were describing like, obviously you made a big jab at Star Trek right off the bat with this is the real space, not the final frontier nonsense, but how everything had that like Futurama-esque, this isn't the Pope, this is the space Pope, this isn't the traffic, this is space traffic. Like there was one reference in there that caught me off guard right off the bat.
That jail is still called the Slammer. Even in space, they still have metal bars that would slam.
Let me see if I can find it. There was one reference, you called space something, and I'm like, why is it called that? Like there's like, I want to know what the distinction was, but I forgot it, and we can just keep going. But I loved how you just kept doing that.
Is it like Space Minute or Hold On One Space Year or something like that? Space
those you can rationalize those with science. I didn't question that one as much. What was the
Space Chicken? I don't remember now. I feel like I wrote myself into a corner.
There was something like that where I was like, what's the difference between this and that? Like,
no, it's a branding thing. I like that your universe, we like to think of, we want the universe to be like Star Trek, but if it just keeps going the way that it's going now, you should have space homeless people. You should have people in just tents in the middle of space floating around. It's no different than what our society is now.
In 10 McGreggor Volume 2, I do have people waiting at like space bus stops, just like a bench floating in the middle of nowhere, just like waiting.
You gotta wait. Now, Mark, how did you become familiar with Rey's work? Did you know about the comic online? When did you guys get in touch?
So Rey, so Ray actually tried reaching out to us a couple times, and our inbox and our DM and everything on social media is always like packed with a bunch of stuff. So which is like a bummer, because when I found out that like Ray had been trying to get a hold of us for a little bit, like, and I was like, man, like like, because the second I saw it, I was like, whoa, dude, I have to know more about this book. It's amazing and whatever. And Ray is a really unique one, because anytime a creator reaches out to us, it'll range from like, I've had people be like, hey, I have an idea for a character I want to sell you guys. And it's like, I don't even have time to like put out all the characters that we have, like, let alone, like entertain, something like that. Or people who have a book, but it's not really fleshed out. When I say like, hey, do you have a page or something you can show me? And then Ray's like, oh, I have a graphic novel. It's done. And then also like, it's his first graphic novel. Like, you see the quality of like people when they're like, I didn't even start out with a graphic. I started with like 5-page, 6-page, 7-page mini comics, because that's a huge undertaking. So it's just like, I was just like, I can't believe how lucky I am that someone's like, here's a book. It's amazing. It's already printed. Like, I've already gotten like a head start. And, we had like a conversation where I was just like, you've done so much of the work on your own, right? And, so what is that relationship going to be? Because we're typically working stuff from development, and I was like, we're a new company, so like, we're going to do a lot of learning together, but I do think we can help like provide a megaphone, for the work that you've already done, and then also help support, the next iterations, the next Tank McGregor books and things like that. But it's the dream type of project you want to get where someone's like has all their shit together. They already out there like going to local comic book stores, and in addition to being like a super talented illustrator and writer, which that's also unique too. Like, the writing of this book, like, besides the art just being like insanely professional,
Right.
like I'm reading it and I'm just like, this writing's like really, really fucking good. Charlie Ragnarok's another, unique one too, where her illustrations and her writing are just like, you're just dying of laughing and like admiring, the art at the same time. So, I think I was just kind of like blown away by that. And then he's like, oh, I also have film background and things like that. So we started making like the promo videos and things like that. And then just wonderful in terms of how Ray works with the rest of the team, because, if there's something he can do, to help, somebody to the left and right of him, he's all game for it, which is hugely, hugely important for like lesser known comics. I've said this like a million times in a bunch of podcasts, is we're not interested in like, no matter how good you are, if you're a prima donna and like, you're just like here to push your book and nobody else's, and you're not helping people to the left and right of you, like, it's just not going to be a good fit for you, because, everything we do, we kind of try and take a communal approach to it, that whole, rising tide lifts all boats type of thing. So I've felt incredibly lucky, to add him into the team.
Chasing your dreams is a lot like a game of chutes and ladders, and I'm so happy to hear that, Ray, you are so far along, and I'm happy to know that you were able to. You were already making your way there. I'm happy that you were able to push this forward a little bit with each other, and I'm glad that you're plugged into that system as well.
Well, yeah, like Mark had mentioned that it was like a dream for him, and it was for me as well, because from my point of view, it was like, I have this thing, but every time I try to post something or try to get it out there, I'm getting like 1 or 2 views on everything. Like, no one's seeing it, and like, so I have this thing and I don't know what to do with it. So I just started like putting it out in comic book stores. And again, like my friends and colleagues at work would like go buy it, but it's like, yeah, awesome, thank you. But like, I told you about it, like, it's not the same. I want people to start finding it normally. And when I met Mark, one of his main things was just him saying like, hey, we're going to give you a bigger megaphone. And that's what sold me on everything. I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I just want to be able to like get it out there.
Right.
And it's happening. I mean, like, every time I post something, I mean, I've been getting like a steady stream of like more followers, which is like not a huge thing, but like, finally people are like seeing what I'm putting out and they're like liking it. And like, responding to it, which is exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to be part of the community.
Does Tank McGregor's hat, does his goggles have any sci-fi things? Does it like zoom in on people? Does it have anything like that? Or is it just a normal glass visor?
It's just a normal glass visor. He needs it to see. That's all
Okay.
I'll say. It's more revealed, and it's revealed in book 3 why he needs it to see, but he needs it to see. So that's why he doesn't take it off, not even in the shower.
Okay, great. Okay, good to know.
I noticed that a couple
it
of
must smell
references.
terrible under there.
Yeah, it smells terrible. And it probably even looks like a Game Boy, original Game Boy, just a green, very bad.
Yeah, he's as a character, you know, he has all the confidence and bravado of that main character, but boy is he a hot mess. Boy is he a hot mess. He's from my interpretation of the comic book, from his bathtub scene, I thought he was having sex with that floating orb robot, and I was like, why did they break up? Like, does he get drunk and still hook up with that robot sometimes? So I didn't know. Yeah, there we go. I mean, look at that. I was like, that's hilarious.
That whole scene was so
Jensen.
weird.
Jensen.
Yeah, I was laughing pretty hard reading this one. Just because his little floating orb thing comes out like, hey, why don't you say I'm pretty anymore, kind of a thing. Like, he's like, take the wig off. What are you doing? Like, that was such a weird sequence. Because like Michael was saying, well, Michael, you go into what you were thinking, because I think that whole tangent was pretty funny.
Well, I originally thought, you know, one of the things that came up was that, you know, when people see the other sex robot, they just know it as a sex robot and they are attracted to it. So I thought we were so far in the future that people are attracted to certain robots. And this fleshlight looking robot, I was like, yeah, that's what it did. And then maybe he like talked to it more, and he like put a day planner and he upgraded it. So I didn't know specifically when this relationship was, but I like the idea that the robots have agencies over themselves, and like, yeah, the robot wants to wear some wigs sometime. Like, robots don't have a gender in them. That was also something that I found very interesting as well, that it was a sex robot, but there's no gender to the robot necessarily, right? The robot's just a robot. So when did you think, has he had sex with that robot?
I mean, what happens behind the scenes is up to them.
Sure.
No. But like, honest to goodness, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself that it happened this way. But like, it's gonna sound like I'm very innocent. It was never meant to be that way. Like, I drew what I thought was an interesting, cool design for like a floating orb, because Jensen went through. Originally, Jensen was the ship. Like, the ship was gonna be talking to him, and like whenever they went on adventures, it's going to be him walking in the giant ship, just kind of like following him. But
it's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a great idea. But then, like, I thought it was a kind of unwieldy to like keep drawing, and at the same time, I feel like Futurama had done something like that. So I decided not to. So then, Jensen became.
Bender uploaded the AI into the ship and it fell in love with him, so it was following him around. Yeah,
exactly. So I thought of that, I'm like, I can't do that. And then Jensen was going to be like this hexagonal thing, and I'm like, wow, I suck at drawing hexagons. And then it was going to be a triangle, and it ended up being just like an orb. And then the circle in the middle was just basically, to me, it was just an eyeball. And it wasn't until literally years later, meeting Mark, and Mark mentioned in some podcast, like off the cuff, it's like, I mean, come on, his companion's like has like a sex hole in it, and I'm like, oh my god, you're right. I without thinking made a fleshlight, you know.
Yeah.
But it was never meant to be that way.
There was a reference in there's a show called Mythic Quest on Apple TV where it's all about video games and devs and stuff, and they say if you give kids a shovel and a digging tool, they'll draw dicks with it. And it's the same idea. Like, you give a hole, they'll fuck the hole. Like, that's kind of like. And
I also like the character wanting a body, but we are trapped by that barrier of entry. I'm like, listen, I don't got enough money. This is all you get right now. So I do like that we will see. I don't know what's in store for Jensen, but I would love to see Jensen with like just 2 legs. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can afford legs now, but yeah, nothing yet there.
Like, just a stick figure body. Like, this is all we get.
Jensen with a stick figure body would be great.
Well, it did also go into that whole like thematically, like he wants a body, he wants a sexy body, right? Or maybe probably a sexy body, most probably 'cause he has short
Probably.
legs. And here they're hunting down like a sexy robot. So it's like, hey, like that guy had a body, maybe I should get a body. Or when you were fighting, you were struggling. If I had a body, I could have helped you. So it's like it's not expressively written down, but there is in my head a little bit of a jealousy from Jensen with this like sexy robot. Like, why does she get a body? Look at her, she's awesome, and like here I am in this floating nondescript ball.
Yeah. And Star Wars now has all the wonderful orb robots, so I can see that I can see that it just looks like a eyeball robot now. But from my vantage point, I was like, oh yeah, that guy has a floating fleshlight with him all the time. I also love that it's so funny when things click and you see your evolutions of your drawings, and that when we see him in his final form, yeah, that's him. That's what he looks like. You know what I mean? That is you have captured something in that silhouette, and there is something about that. He almost
you're
has,
to tank?
Yeah, just that final design that you win on. It does click. I enjoy all of those things, and I also like to know that he is the not a bum, but like the bare minimum of entry to being what he does. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He's like a bum with an address, really. Like,
yeah. He's got a very nice RV, kind of. It's very small.
Well, you were speaking to him being this like super overly confident guy, but really he's a mess. And yeah, I mean, like, aren't we all, right? Like, it's the way we would like to all present ourselves as this, like, I know what I'm doing, and there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm a badass, and this and that around everybody. And when he's alone, he's like in his PJs, he's in a tub without water, he's just drinking, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
He's carrying a stuffed animal with him. He still has a stuffed animal. That's a huge tell of like, oh my goodness, he's like a little baby boy.
Right, exactly. And just around Jensen, he's the only one he trusts to be completely himself around. Everybody else, he's got to have that sort of like blind bravado.
Not where do these characters go, because they can go anywhere. That aspect of it is, what other parts of the universe are you excited to explore more? There's the transhumanism stuff of what is people, what is consciousness, what are these things? What other places are you excited to take these characters to?
I am excited to take them to, well, I'm currently, I would say, a little more than halfway through volume 2, which I haven't revealed or shown anything because it's still like in this drafting phase. But in that one, they're basically we're exploring the other religions in this universe. I think I had my fill of like transhumanism and like robots and like what it is to be conscious and all that stuff. And there's still some form of that, but I want to explore more like religions and how religions come to be. When I reflected a little bit with our societies, and like, sure, right now Catholicism and all these are just like staples and everybody just accepts them as what they are. Well, like, why did it start? Like, maybe in this universe, some major religion that is everywhere started because some guy needed a tax break on something, or he needed he made up a lie to his wife. That's why he was missing that night, and that's just started some sort of religion. Like, his story, it's like a lie. Not saying religion's a lie, or I'm not going to get into that. But it's like if a lie grew far beyond the control of a person to where it becomes this religion and he just can't back out of it. Like, that kind of stuff really interests me. And I touch on some of that in the next book, but it's mainly just like the religions. And one of my biggest inspirations is Dune. And I love Dune. And that one has to do a lot with like people's religions and beliefs and all that. So I wanted to get more into that, but it still maintains the same quirkiness, and I still take the piss out of everything, and it doesn't take itself super seriously, but it has to do with these like high concept sci-fi, like religion versus technology. What's it all about?
It's so funny that you mentioned Dune. Something that Mark had said earlier, your filmmaking mind shows in some of those exterior shots, showing space traffic. We're not looking at it from a side. They are cinematic angles to that. And some of your, it's so funny. Some of your scenes, like the campfire scene, with the 3 robots, there's something about like a David Lynch scene or something like that. There's a dreamlike quality to it. There's shadows flickering in the fire. I wonder if that's the connection to Dune, or maybe just some of this stuff. I am also a big Dune guy, so I'm happy to know that influences you as well. Dune is thousands of years, though, but I mean, that has that integration of human technologies. Will you have any, in Dune, they had the great war and they killed off all robots and the AI, but there's still kind of pockets of it here and there, and sometimes they need to have it.
The Butlerian Jihad, yes.
Yeah. And you also have, but they still make some things, and like, right, Paul gets something from them at one point. Do you have any characters coming up that will be superhuman in that ability, like a robot, but are still considered human?
No, I actually hadn't really thought of that yet, to be honest. You
don't have a Gurney character that's like a human computer. Its eyes go back in its head.
That's actually that's not Gurney. That's the other one. That's the Mentat. What's his name?
Not Duncan. I thought it was Gurney. No, Gurney
was the combat guy.
Yeah,
Gurney's the combat guy, and the Mentat is. Oh, I can't correct you if I can't really say the real one. Sorry.
It's okay. No. I appreciate being corrected. It's the guy who has to milk the tiny cat.
I got some cred by mentioning the Butlerian Jihad, and I just lost it by not remembering the guy's name.
I'll find it.
Listen, Dune is another language. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know, right? No, but I hadn't thought of that. I mean, like, my inspirations of Dune are like the whole religion thing and like the far, far along into the future thing. But no, I didn't have any character like that thought of. I've been sort of toying with the idea of like maybe like Tank should have a rival bounty hunter, not someone who like wants to kill him. It's just like his rival. They're always like losing jobs out to the other person, and I think he should be called Cosmo Rodriguez, and that's all I have.
Cosmo Rodriguez is a great name.
Thank you. That's all I have for that.
If we're pitching ideas, what comes to mind for me is a robot horse, and he rides the horse, but then like the horse's legs fold over like this, and it's a rocket horse, and he's like, "Sorry, you're in second place again, Tank. Yeehaw!" And then it just zooms up this way.
Speaking of riding horses, I just realized what's riding your unicorn in your shirt, Michael?
That's a sloth.
You got a sloth. See, I got the Grim Reaper riding a unicorn. That was totally like, I don't know what. Maybe.
Oh wow! I know we're wearing a unicorn shirt.
Yeah. Well, these are mythical creatures. These don't exist. That's the difference. You know what I mean?
I've just got Master Roshi's house on mine. Not fancy.
Ray, your shirt is very Dragon Ball Z. All those characters have numbers and sayings on it. You are also wearing a Dragon Ball Z shirt, in my opinion. Yeah.
Funny story. This is just my family shirt. In my mom's side of the family, there are so many. Like my grandparents had 12 kids. And each one of them had like 4 kids. So we have so many cousins that we just started just numbering ourselves. This is my number. This is the number that I came out. I was the 8th cousin. Wow. And it goes all the way to like 30 something. So this is my, like, if you see the back of my, this is my last name.
So rad.
That's actually pretty great.
I'm going to let you know that is a family assassin story if I've ever heard it. People got to get their way through the ranks. How does the 37th cousin become the top cousin? He's got to
take them all out.
Yeah, man. If we were in ancient Rome, it would have been a bloodbath.
Yep. No, Michael's met my family. My mom was one of 8, and of the 8 kids, I am the oldest of like 35 grandkids. So I'm number 1, but the youngest one's got to watch out.
Did you have a ton of, now you're the 8th cousin. Do you have a bunch of brothers and sisters then as well?
I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
She's a doctor and he's a lawyer. And I'm here in the middle, like, oh, I'm making comics.
You are the art sandwich on, or I should say, the delicious Oreo filling of their very straight-laced lives.
Yeah, I should start saying it that way. You're right. Yeah.
You're the cream filling. You're the best part. In fact, you're double stuffed because you have lots of ideas. Have they read your work? Do they know about Tank McGregor?
Yes, they know about Tank McGregor. They've read my work. My brother reads it almost immediately. My sister, well, she's a doctor and she's got kids. So it takes her a little longer. She has to read it in in several nights. But yeah, they like. It's funny because my sister has kids, and they read the book before she did, and they're like 7 and 5 and 3, and yeah, I know, right? And like my sister's like, oh yeah, totally give it to them, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, have you read it? She's like, no, they love that kind of stuff. I'm like, all right, cool, and they all like saw it, and then like a month later, my sister finally read it, and she's like, hey, this is not for kids.
Your art style is wonderfully appealing, and there is that fun Adult Swim. Adult Swim originally was taking all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons and reusing the animation. A Space Ghost, Ghost Coast to Coast. You know what I mean? It was using
Harvey
all of
Birdman,
that.
yeah.
Right, but there was a template there. Your art style to the things that you had mentioned, it's very inviting. But then when you read it, I told Taylor, I was like, we have to talk about sex robots. Like, that's not a thing that you can talk about with the general audience. It's a very specific thing.
Yeah,
it caught me off guard because I was reading it and I'm like, cool. And then like they get to the part where they're talking to the hologram, the AI interface, and it's like, okay, 50s robot, cool. Okay, now she's in an S&M outfit. Okay, cool. Now it's getting weird. And then like another few pages later, I'm like, oh, there's some penises. That's surprising. And I was just like, what is happening in this book?
There's a lot of penis in this book. There's even more in book 2. I gotta calm down.
But you know what? It didn't. We're dealing with forms. You know what I mean? And we have robot forms and human forms. That is what these forms look like in what they look like in a production model. So I don't know. Nothing was too gratuitous to me. I didn't feel like it. Everything felt like it was in the world. And also it's a dirty world. I mean, it's a lascivious space. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to get with this sex robot. The moment we go to a big city, we have to see all the lights and the bars and whatever like street robots there are that are a little bit janky and stuff like that.
That first space station is basically just one giant red light district. I mean, if you look closely to the detail of like the signs, it's all just like girls, and like this and that. Well, it's actually like girls, Zerls, and Gore, or something like that. Like I wrote, because they're not all girls, they could do whatever you want. But Thufir Hawa, thank you. Who wrote that? Was that you?
That's a crazy name. That's not a thing you just remember. The main guy's name is Paul. That's very easy to remember.
Yeah, Paul and then Thufir. Anyway, that was killing me, and I was going to tell you, keep looking good. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, man.
I needed to naturally segue it in, but I couldn't find a spot, so I'm like, I'll just throw it in the chat, and then it happened the way it was. Yeah.
Well, I ruined the natural segue because I just shouted it in the middle of my other thought.
You were talking about the red light district and then the other species.
Yeah, and you're saying like it's a very it's a dirty universe. Yeah, I think the places we visit in this comic are the dirty sites. I mean, who's to say there isn't a planet that's just all like home on the prairie, kind of thing.
Right.
It's open to everything. That's the beauty of sci-fi and like these kind of like universes. They could be, friends have pitched me like, oh, you should make a planet that's all like noir, and like whenever you go on the planet, everything's black and white, and like, oh, that's a cool idea. Write it down, steal it for myself. It's not my idea.
So the atmosphere filters out the sun, so everything comes black and white. Like you can rationalize it any way you want, and it's
just about to say it. It's the easiest rationalization. No, we have a weird sun. It's a dwarf star, but we still have enough light. It just looks like this. Lights a cigarette and blows it out. You know what I mean?
The cigarette comes in red, and he's like, "Ooh, that's a cool effect."
I had an idea. I don't know how to rationalize this, but like I had an idea for a planet that is just planet depression, and like everything. It's just everything depressing happens on it. So like you'll be walking around and you'll like look over and you'll see like Atreyu pulling Artax out of the mud and like, don't die, Artax. And just like, oh shit, let's get out of here.
I could think of some fun ways to rationalize that.
Yeah, there's a weird, it's like a mushroom planet. There's like a weird chemical in the air, and when you breathe it in, it's not dangerous, but you're gonna see horrifically sad things with whatever resonates to you. And you look over and you just see one guy just seeing Old Yeller being blown away, just being like, we gotta leave this place.
I was thinking more like it's a weird nexus in the universe where like all the negative thoughts of the universe get gathered in one spot because of the way it's aligned with the universe. So when you walk there, you just see all the sad shit from everyone's inner monologues.
Oh God.
Just walking like, oh no,
That's
It's
where
all the
yeah,
80s
you gotta.
movies.
That's where the prison's got to be, right? Yeah, that's how you said.
Yeah, they put the prison in the middle.
Yeah, the prison. It's got to be a prison planet. Yeah. Welcome to prison. Here's your cancer.
I was about to say, there is a just because of the grizzled chin, there is a sort of Judge Dredd quality to Tank McGregor's helmet. If I would love to see Tank McGregor on a prison planet where he's got to escape the prison, it wouldn't be an action movie. It would just be him using all of his smarts and bravado to try to get out of there. You know what I mean? But I mean,
that's one thing that I love about the character is that his smarts and bravado is like it's all fake, and I loved that so much in that whole sequence where he's like. His inner monologue, he was echoing his inner monologue, like nailed it. Nailed. Like that was one of my favorite frames, especially when he's like, act like you're confident, but you don't know what you're doing. Like I was like, yes, I love this so much. That was such a cool sequence.
It's like the whole, I think one of the lines is like, I want to remember my training, especially a part where I never had any.
Yeah, I
really,
really,
such a great sequence.
I really, I do a ton of writing myself, and I haven't done any, sci-fi stuff. And anytime, we bring somebody on who writes in a way that I like really admire, but it's completely different than the way I write. Like it is so healthy to the creative process, like across the team, because like, there's so many things that like Rey leans into, like the dad jokes, the idea that Tank lights his cigarette by like shooting a gun, which is like just super ridiculous, right?
Crazy town.
And then you realize, especially when you're world building, right? Because most of the limitations, especially in comic books, they're self-imposed. You haven't really decided maybe what the rules of the storytelling are and things like that, and it's so liberating to be like, oh, you can get away with just doing that, right? And so, after reading the book, like the amount of, ideas that come in, and then you start looking at the scripts that you have in the works, and you're just like, oh man, like, it just opens up so many possibilities. So it's been really exciting because, I talked to Rey and he was just like, he'd say on some of the parts, oh, I put something in there as almost like a placeholder. Like I put dialogue in there, like the line, I love the "show me your blam blam face," like, and then he's like, and then it just started to grow on him, and he's like, oh, I'm keeping it, and I was just like, that's a fantastic like strategy just for writing. It's like put it there and let it kind of sit for a second, and then maybe you'll end up loving it.
Show me your blam blam face is something I want on a t-shirt. It's very good. It's a catchphrase if I've ever heard it. If we're talking about
just
the
have
Fox
that with
kids,
him, like with a cigarette, like
if we're talking about like the promo to make me want to watch that, it's show me your blam blam face. Oh yeah, for sure.
And going back to the whole writing, I was telling, I want to just throw props because like I admire the way Mark does things, because like you look at Mark's books, every book is like a completely different. They all have the underlying the same character going through all of them, Danny, but like they all are a completely different genre and completely different like things happening. And I find it very hard for myself to get out of like a science fiction space or even get out of a comedy space, right? If I want to write something that's more serious and more like, all right, this can be my Academy Award winning piece, I always end up like defaulting back to like making a joke out of it. And I sometimes it works, but sometimes I don't like doing that. And Mark's style is like, he seems to be able to like go back and forth between whatever he wants very naturally.
I'm glad to know that you both inspire each other in a way for the other person to think differently. It is so frustrating when we get stuck in our creative boxes and you're like, there's no way out of here. And someone is like, oh, it's really easy. And you're like, oh, there is a way out of here. Like, yeah, I appreciate that. That's I'm glad to know that you are both building off of each other. Are there any talks of all of these characters coming together in one special edition in the 100th episode of the 25th anniversary in the 1 year anniversary? Is there any way for these characters to all interact with each other on some sort of adventure?
The first place I think we're talking about, crossing, so how Lesser Known Comics is set up, we have a lesser known universe, right? So that's the stuff that mostly like, I'm doing the writing for, or we have people that come in and write with the characters in the canon, within it. The lesser known universe was always intended to be like a sandbox for people to. We had a lot of folks that never made a comic book before. They're really talented illustrators, and they were just like, something's really easy for them to be like, oh, it's so much easier for me to work on somebody else's characters and illustrate that than trying to come up with story and illustration at the same time. So I tell them a little bit about the universe, and then we pick like a little plot of land they can just kind of, go from there. And the idea that in maybe a book where they're, in the lesser known universe that we're writing, they walk by a movie theater and there's like a movie poster for Tank McGreggor 8, or something like that, something completely like over the top. Or if, just in someone's bookshelf, there's like a Gorbis the Conqueror, collected works or something like that. But yeah, I would absolutely love that, to even, figure out a way where we can have, just a one shot or something like that, where we can put, characters into. We also have a, World Eater, which is also an intergalactic story. So, maybe having the folks from there somehow be existing, in a, maybe Gorbis the Conqueror like studied, the events of there and talked about, the strategy, the military strategy that's happening there. That's all fun stuff to me. And I don't think there's any limitations to that.
I was actually immediately thinking of something like Gorbis the Conqueror making an offhand reference to this mythical Pineapple Pete monster. And just like have that like a reference is like off to the side, like this guy bends realities, he's a dick. Like just like something like that. And then tie it right into Digital Lizard of Doom because Pineapple Pete's like this world creating monster thing. So
yeah, I see more like Gorbis the Conqueror roomed with him in college with Pineapple Pete.
Yeah, something like that. He was a former roommate. I hated him. He left his shit everywhere.
Gorbis the Conqueror
late at night. I hate him.
Gorbis also looks like Conan the Barbarian, but like green, correct? He's like a big dude.
He is a big dude. He is a Conan-ish type. I hadn't decided on the color yet. I feel like I naturally default to like, oh, he's green, and I try to want to get away from that. But how many more colors do you have in like a science fiction?
You make him like hot pink, something weird, something that makes it so he had to toughen himself up. He's
Yeah,
like, I'm tough because I'm pink. Like,
yeah, exactly.
One thing that I wanted to bring up that I absolutely loved was in the first chapter. Tank has he hunts down that what was his name? Nebular, and he makes a reference that he's hunted down like 5 others before or something. And he's like, I got the right one this time.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. So I see what you're doing. But then his like weirdly specific moral code where like the cop is like, you turned in the drug dealer, do you want to turn in the murderer at the same time? He's like, no, you're only paying me for one. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, he's very much, and you mentioned Judge Dredd. He was 100% inspired by Judge Dredd, and Judge Dredd is all about the law. Like specifically, I would do this because I'm referencing the Stallone one. But he is all about the law, so I thought, okay, so Tank McGreggor has to be all about the contract, and it fits with his arc at the end of the book, obviously. Yeah, he's all about the contract, and to establish that, it's like, how can I say that it's the most important thing in the world? Well, the initial contract was just for this guy as this, not as this other thing. So he's just going to bring him in for this, and he's not going to try to like get some extra bucks or whatever, even though he's broke, because that's his ethics. As above all, he believes in the contract and the rule of space law.
Yeah, like I found that kind of just like exactly like you said. Like in the next page, he's talking about how broke he is, and I'm like, well, they were offering him like $100K for catching the drug dealer, but the bounty for the murderer was like $500K, but he turned it down because that wasn't the contract he took. And I'm like, that's such a weirdly specific moral code for a character like this who's super broke and complaining about how broke he is.
He's not a Karen. He's not a Karen. He's not here to. He's not going to ask for the manager. He's going to do his job, and then he's going to go on with his day. He's a good guy.
I really like that. I thought that was kind of cool, and you can have a lot of fun with that.
Well, it's one of those things. Like, I don't know. Yeah. What?
I was saying, he comes in a room and he's hunting down like 12 people. We just did it again. What if like one of those 5 random goons that the guy was throwing at him was another bounty, but he's not going to collect it because it was just collateral damage kind of a thing. He's like, okay, well, that sucks that I missed out on that one. But
right,
that's just exactly. It's such a weird code for the character.
And it's like, I don't know if you guys ever like feel super guilty about things, like, and like that guilt follows you through like for days and days. Like some people, like my wife, like something will happen and she's like, oh, I feel bad about it, and then like get over it. But me, if I did something wrong, or if I like screwed someone over, or if I had a sense that I like made someone upset at me, it'll last for like a month, you know. So I have that sort of like, all right, I'm very careful not to like upset the status quo. I'm very careful not to like do anything illegal and things like that, you know. So like a little bit of that, I guess, bleeds through that, you know. He's like very straight laced in that sense.
I can't wait to see excerpts from Space Law, you know, because I imagine Space Law just like our law, where it's like, you know, like horses must wear diapers, you know, like in you know, Manhattan or whatever. Like, what are the arcane, like old antiquated space laws that are still out there, you know, especially for somebody who lives like by the law.
Like you can't hold hands with your robot companion during the hours of 5 and 7, like something like that. Like, what is this? Why was this a rule? What happened? What happened to make this law?
Like homeless people can claim eminent domain on an asteroid if it hasn't been lived in for more than whatever, you know, like things like that.
They're a sovereign country now. You got to respect their rights.
Right, exactly.
One thing that, like Michael said earlier with the campfire scene, that was 100% like a David Lynchian kind of a sequence. I loved how it's set up, and they're just kind of like reminiscing, and you're like, okay, cool. They're just talking about somewhat becoming self-aware, and then here comes the sex bot, and they're like, oh, cool, another friend, yay! And then like immediately turns like, now we're gonna eat you, and I was like, oh my god, what is happening? Like,
well, it just made sense, right? I mean, like if they want to, the whole point of them is they're trying to integrate into organic society, and the way they view people is they eat meat, right? So in their mind, it's like, oh, so then if fleshy things eat fleshy things, we robot things have to eat other robot things. That's how we become more human, by eating ourselves. It's a weird logic that they went through, you know?
Yeah, like to me, the equivalent would be like, okay, well, they eat lesser things, so we have to start eating calculators and toasters. Like that's what I would have rationalized, but they're like, nope, let's eat the sex robot. And I was like, what is happening?
I think one of the strengths of, I was just gonna say, I think one of the strengths of what Rey's storytelling is that that opening scene is very fast paced, right? Of like, and then we switch to like this calm desert. So I think it comes from his like film creating background, you know, of like, because we've actually had like a lot of folks who had screenplays. It wasn't something that they could budget out or whatever, so they wanted to make a comic book of it. And many times they don't understand like the comic book making process. So like they're like, oh, this is going to be exponentially easier to make a comic, and you're like, no, it's an apples oranges thing, right? Like it comes with its own complications. So it feels like watching a movie, you know, when Rey's making comics. So it's like you get this scene that's like super fast paced, and then we break, we build out the universe, you get this calm thing, and then all of a sudden there's like the twist on the scene, you know, and it's really unique storytelling within, you know, comic book creating. So I think it breathes a lot of fresh air into like what you see out there, you know, in graphic novels.
And I also like just the scope of your art. You know, those the character designs that are reminiscent of kind of a Futurama, but then you have some like Jonan Vasquez, Invader Zim looking dudes that show up as well, that feel like their very own, that feel separate, but also in this world as well. So I love the flair to everything in that, because you are coming from different worlds and different places. Yeah, things can look like different things on those places. It makes the world feel very fleshed out, but allows for it to feel different. Where sometimes worlds, you know, you look at it like Taylor's Akira Toriyama shirt. When you watch any of his stuff, you're like, oh, they all look like Akira Toriyama people. There's a lizard man, there's a dog person. It all looks like that. Where your influences here are so vast. I love the way the universe is filled out.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, like part of that is just trying to keep myself entertained, right? I mean, it did get to a point where like towards the end, and even like in book 2, I started realizing like, man, maybe I should have some sort of structure. Because it's just like, now I'm going to draw this, now I'm going to draw that, now I'm going to draw that. Like it doesn't have any rhyme or reason. I just want to keep my brain entertained, and also like the viewers I entertained, you know, like the main guy at the beginning, the main bad guy at the beginning of the book, Nublar, he's a Quelaag. So naturally, there's got to be other Quelags out there, but I don't want them all to look the same. So I just show him because I don't want to have a bunch of like same looking people, you know. But you don't see another Quelaag in the whole book. You see vastly different shapes and sizes because everybody is just a giant melting pot of like from different nations and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, I find it boring when everybody looks almost like the same in uniform, you know. But it is something that I was trying to like fix, especially in book 2, where I have more like I was talking about religions. I have more like religious societies. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to have some semblance of uniformity to this planet. You know, there are other planets where it's all an amalgamation of people. Here, it's going to be just these kind of people. So like then within this frame of a person, I'm going to try to do different shapes. So I'm more challenging myself in that aspect as well.
It's so funny when we're talking about religion. I just instantly kind of think of these spanning cathedrals of Dr. Seuss, these landscapes and weird architecture that doesn't make any sense, but within that world, it makes sense. And I'm super excited to hear that as we get to these different planets, we will get to see their interpretations of what churches or what holy spaces look like. And it will not be the same from one place to another.
Well, and I'm not going to reveal too much, but like I am doing like massive temples and like ancient cities and churches and all that stuff. And I work with a colorist, Michael Woods. And when I finish a page, I send it to him and I send him with notes. And the notes that I've written him for all the temple stuff, I'm just like, just make it look like a Cheesecake Factory. Like use that. Use the Cheesecake Factory as your template and like go for it, because I'm like that's what I was seeing in my mind. It's gotta look like that's the best way I can describe it. And someone even like says something like, "Oh, I like your temple. It has a real casual dining look about it." You know? Like,
yeah, a lot of booths and stuff like that. Here in LA at the Grove, which is attached to the Farmers Market, which is an old thing that's been there. They added this big mall into it. They have a Cheesecake Factory there that is just like the most. It is almost like a temple to food. You can get anything you want. Jalapeno poppers, like it's just everything. And you're right. It is that like homogenization of just like food, whatever you want, come enjoy it and enjoy us and give us tips.
Well, I heard that, I don't know if this is true, but I heard somewhere that Cheesecake Factory is meant to be structured like Atlantis. So like the design of it is supposed to be like Atlantis. Which I'm like, because it's a weird decision to make when you're making a restaurant, I guess.
The most cocaine-addled idea I've ever heard of a guy in a room being like, it's going to look like Atlantis. Atlantis, people will have cheesecake, and they'll be able to eat chicken fingers. That's the craziest. And you know what's funny?
We'll serve
they will worship the cheesecake.
It absolutely looks like Atlantis. If there were two guys with tridents and they let you in and they're like, all right, you're good to come into Atlantis. Absolutely. That's a crazy idea. That's amazing.
Yeah. Maybe it started out that way and someone had to like calm the guy down and like, no, let's just keep it more. You can't have fountains shooting at the people.
Everything about Cheesecake Factory is cocaine riddled. They have too many options of food. You should make 5 things amazing.
And don't knock Cheesecake Factory, all right?
I'm going to listen. This isn't the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not here to shit on your love of Cheesecake Factory. I'm just going to let you know. I just feel like it is. If someone was like, describe Western cult, like what is like in the Matrix, like what is the height of Western culture? It would be me talking to Morpheus inside of a Cheesecake Factory. And he'd be like, what is this place like? This is what we did. This is what we did on a Saturday.
This is our achievement.
Yeah, Morpheus, 4 cheese pasta, you're going to love it. Yeah.
Cheesecake Factory is an adult version of Chuck E. Cheese.
I Googled it and I 100% see this whole like wavy Atlantis vibe to it.
Yes,
so now I cannot unsee it.
Well, the one in Austin has like actual like columns and like giant it looks like a temple, honestly. Like it's weird.
It probably was. It was an old Messianic temple that they converted into a restaurant.
Yeah, that's so funny. I've never thought about that's a great
so weird.
That is a great pull from you. I've never thought about that as that sort of space before, but you're right. They're like weird temples. And the most American thing of all, we built a temple to cheesecake. 1 million calories and Oreo, whatever cheesecake you want. We got it, baby.
I love this.
I would rather go there every Sunday than like having to go to church. You know,
man would light incense. Oh, and then
take a
it would-
pilgrimage to like the first cheesecake factory. Like you have to pilgrim there like once, you know,
Yeah.
like a year. You know, absolutely.
yeah. I'm telling
You
you,
have to bow to the first cheesecake.
yeah. You go and you take communion. You get a little bite of the original cheesecake, and they give you a little sip of fruit punch, and then you go sit down.
Every now and then, a priest will come and ask you how your meal is. We're like when you're mid-bite. Like,
You're like, it's really good. It's really good. It's pretty good. Can we get more of this? These Jesus rolls. This bread is great. Can we get more of this bread? Thank you.
My daughter comes to get like I'll be eating Cheez-Its or pretzels or something like that, and like she always comes up like this because she wants one. And I started saying it because I thought it was funny to me. Like I started saying like "Body of Christ" when I like handed it to her.
He's like handed the one cheese it that way.
I'm sure that'll fuck her up later down the line. Like she's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys."
Her teacher's gonna send home a note that she disturbed another kid at recess when she was like, "Give me your body of Christ. Come on, I want it. Give me your Teddygram Jesuses."
Just imagine her on like the lunchroom.
Was having kids bow for their crackers, and she was handing them one at a time.
Standing on the cafeteria table, there's a line of children, and she's handing out her like snacks, being like "Body of Christ, Body of Christ, Body of Christ." I'd be so proud.
That's really funny.
I would always follow my friends to churches, and I didn't know any of that stuff, so I would just get in line with everybody else. Like, what are we doing? Okay, whatever. Like, I took it at every church and didn't know I wasn't supposed to, or it was like a thing. I just wanted to do what everyone else was doing.
Yeah,
that's what I love. My nephew, his best friend is Jewish, and he wanted to just go to temple. So my sister, just in passing, talking to my parents, they're like, "Oh, where's Reed this morning?" And she's like, "Oh, he's at temple." And my parents are like, "What?" She's like, "I guess he's Jewish now. I'm not really sure."
To be fair,
he comes back and says, "Dad, we've been doing it all wrong."
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. It's funny because where we grew up, there was all these mega evangelical churches started popping up, and there was kind of all these mega churches, but rarely did you ever have anyone come home and be like, "This is my yarmulke. I am Jewish now. You've been doing it wrong, Dad." They made a covenant with God. We get a piece of land. It's in the Middle East. He's coming back. Come on over. Is there don't give anything away. You've said a lot. Is there going to be like space Jews? Are there going to be like a space Catholicism?
Yeah, it's not going to be called that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no. I try to stay away from anything too earthy, too humanoid. And one of the ways that I stupidly got around that was putting space in front of things that I just couldn't get around. Like, I want to let people know this is going to take 3 years. But wait, years is a human Earth concept. I'll just call it space years,
Yeah.
And and that's how that was born out of that. And it's gotten kind of out of hand, because now when I'm writing, I'm like, oh shit, well, that's kind of an Earth thing, but that doesn't fit if I put space in front of it. All right, I'll just kind of like let it go this one time. But there's a lot of like, there's space chicken, hold up a space minute. Oh, my whole space, goddamn, whatever. Like, I put space in front of so many things, especially in the second book, that I'm kind of writing myself in a corner.
I really want like the Futurama reference. The space pope is just a lizard dude in a robe. Like, I want something just weird like that. Who's that? That's a space priest. Why does he have tentacles? That's the guy that got it. He's an octopus man.
It's just like a gaseous entity without form or shape that just narrates.
But somehow has a hat that keeps going with him.
That hat. Exactly.
Well, how do we yell Tank McGregor from the mountaintops, right? I don't have a mountaintop. I have this microphone in the show. How can people find this? How can we get them to support this work?
You want to go, or
you go for it. You go for it.
Oh yeah. So right now, we got Tank McGregor on Kickstarter. One of the things that we did, because it is a graphic novel. So Rey made essentially like a mini version that has just like an excerpt of the scene. So that's also available, like, you know, people just want to taste, like, or an appetizer. And then it also gave us the opportunity to put like make a sketch cover version of that, so that so like other artists or something like that they want to draw Tank McGregor, so they'll have like essentially the cover, but it's all white with only the Tank McGregor logo, so they can, you know, draw their own version. And then on that Kickstarter, you know, Tank McGregor is kind of like the headliner, and then we have a couple other books that are brand new releases, Death Wish and Good Night. So these are just two mini comics that are also put out by lesser known comics. So that's kind of like what we're getting in the habit of, is taking like a headliner, and the other ones, we call it, you know, a batch. We're on batch 4, and batch 5 will be coming out in a few months. And yeah, it's a really good way. We try and like make lesser known comics like a place where we're like curating like a collection of indie comics that someone can come in, back one Kickstarter, and like get a bunch of cool books, you know, that are all meet like a certain, you know, quality standard. And then within that Kickstarter as well, there's options to, you know, get caught up in the rest of the lesser known comics catalog. We have all the, you know, lesser known comics books that we have, as well as some other standalone stuff. Vampire Cult, which is Charlie Ragnarok's book. She's our creative director. And then, of course, as you guys are familiar, we got the Digital Lizards of Doom stuff on there as well. So, yeah, I think there's actually like a couple of tiers. I know there's a couple of tiers. I made them, so I guess I wouldn't be just thinking. But you know, get all the lesser known comics, you know, graphic novels, or get all the lesser known comic, you know, like mini comics and things like that. So there's a lot on that Kickstarter, but we're really happy that Tank McGregor is like, you know, the lightning rod right now that we're like focusing on to like show people, like, because this is our first one getting in the ground floor of like a graphic novel series. You know, we did Digital Lizards of Doom, but he was already on, you know, the third book of that. So it's really exciting for us to like be like, this is like the first one where we can be like, you're starting your journey here. We're going to take you on a ride over the next, you know, few years, and you're going to see this guy, you know, Tank McGregor, who's a total badass, you know, going through space, going on all these adventures and stuff like that. So we're just absolutely stoked.
Ray, where do I follow you? Where can I go look at all your doodles? Where do you doodle? Where do you put your thoughts on the internet?
Right now, I put them on the dark web. No,
okay.
Yeah, so you can find me, mainly my main thing is Instagram. If you go to Tank McGregor Comic on Instagram, that is where I post everything Tank McGregor related, and mostly art related. So yeah, that I would say that's my main squeeze right there. I've been doing a lot recently, and I'm going to be posting this later today.
Oh yeah.
Sort of like I was feeling kind of inspired by like the Rocketeer pinups that Dave Stevens used to do, with like the Rocketeer and like some like Betty Page looking woman. So I wanted to do those with Tank and the sexy robot. So I'll be posting that later today. But yeah, Tank McGregor Comic, that's where you can find me. And tankmcgregor.com, you can see some more of my art and my blog there, and that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. We did recently. We're talking all about how we want a new Rocketeer. We would like the Rocketeer to come back. We love the world of Rocketeer. It has been gone for so long. Is there any way for Tank McGregor to afford a Rocketeer pack?
No, he can't afford it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he can't afford it. It's too much money, and he doesn't have enough to even like eat. So how could he even? He probably, and Jensen would probably break his neck. I mean, like, you would want to get enough money for a jetpack. You can at least get me a pair of legs first, a pair of sexy legs or something.
I do like the idea that Jensen gets a jetpack before Tank does, and that Jensen can float around which already floats around. But
yeah, so you already float. Why do you need a jetpack? Yeah.
I need a jetpack. I want to go higher, faster.
I got speed now.
But no,
I'm also kind of envisioning this end game kind of a Mega Man and and Rush kind of a thing where he's like, we have to do the Alpha Protocol, and like Jensen hooks onto his back and they just float really slowly together.
Yeah, he holds on to him. Yeah,
Go, go.
Like Aang in Avatar, he like sits on Jensen. It's like for speed, and it's just real slow moving.
There's a pit we have to cross. We have to do it.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing this work with us. Your humor comes across. It is a very funny book. But I was blown away at the other aspects of the world that you're playing with consciousness and what does it mean to be a person? What is it, right? Like, what does it mean to be an entity? You know, I am Michael in this meat avatar body, but would I still be that if I was in something else? And what could I be if I was something else? So I was very happy to see all of those inward ideas. Because as you jab at Star Trek, who varies the final frontier, it's like, oh, you've looked into medicine. Everything else is figured out. The only thing that's left is out in space. And I love that you're bringing that universal idea, but that we're still asking these questions of who am I and what am I to the universe? So I hope that more people go and support this. This was a fabulous read, and I can't wait to see what you do with these characters next. There is a huge universe out there, and I'm ready to jump into it with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I'm glad you responded to it as well as you did. I mean, it means a lot. And it really, I mean, obviously when you're after writing it for so long, you're like, man, does this even like read? Is it even funny? Is it even like whatever? Are these ideas going to come through? So just hearing you guys talk about it and even speaking to Mark for the first time about it, like, it's just like, okay, it works. Fine. Good. I can calm down a bit.
I definitely got like a lot of like Cowboy Bebop vibes from it. With like how dirt poor they were, but how goofy the main character was, and his own like he has his code, he has his weird his sense of humor that just doesn't translate to everyone else. But like at the end of the day, like he still does the right thing, despite the fact that the contract was for doing one thing, and he's like, no, that's not the right thing. Like there was still something that very much like Spike Spiegel to me about this guy, but like wearing a Judge Dredd helmet. So like there's
exactly
a lot of coolness to it.
Yeah, my wife definitely, when she talks about it to people, she calls it Cowboy Bebop meets Futurama. It's the way she pitches it with other people, and I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to stop you.
I definitely got those vibes out of it, and I really enjoyed it. So I 100% want to see more. I can't wait to see the next volume. So do you have an ETA on when the next one is ready, or do you have like a ballpark, like maybe next year, or what's your process on that?
How much are you beating yourself up every day to come out with more ideas?
Yeah.
Oh, well, since the Kickstarter began and this whole Kickstarter campaign with Mechanical Menace, I've been sort of like not pausing, but like I haven't been drawing Tank McGregor 2, which is called Cosmic Colossus, as much. But I have 90 pages done. And I'm just basically reaching the end game. I'm already like in the final, like, all right, I already got all my pieces. I just have to end it. It's going to be about 30 pages left, I think, of like the final stretch. But I'm also dependent on my colorist. So I will do pages and then send them out to him like 10 at a time, 10 every month, which is what he can take, because he's got other jobs. And then just kind of like wait every month. So if I have like, and I have right now, I have like 70 pages colored. So if I do like 50 more, it'll be like 5 more months, So yeah, I don't want to set a set date, but I'm trying to by this year.
Well, listen, Mark already talked about your amazing work ethic and the fact that, I know lots of people that got ideas on napkins and, want to sell ideas to Mark, and that's nothing there. To hear that you are working on this, that it is in the mindset, and you are working as fast as your little fingers can go. I appreciate that. This is I'm excited to see where this universe goes. And that's a lot of work. That's another thing. As I'm going through this book, it's like, oh, this is 100+ pages. You know what I mean? That's a lot of man hours. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what people don't understand when you translate these ideas, especially into a format like this. It is not one-to-one with those type of things.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think that's a lot of work, wait till you see book 2. Oh boy. Oh boy. Nah, they're both good.
Well, thank you guys again for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Everyone, if you haven't heard of it yet, definitely go check him out on Instagram. Go check him out on the Kickstarter. Go to his Take McGregor website and get straight to the Kickstarter link and support that project, because Michael and I both read it. We both loved it. It was quirky. It was wonderful. I had fun with it.
It wasn't a slog. I enjoyed reading it. Each page made me want to read more. At no point was I like, how many more pages do I have left? When I was reading it, I was like, oh, this has to end. I don't want it to end. You know what I mean?
So I did that. How many more pages are left? Just because I'm like, I was locked in. I'm like, how much more do I have left till I'm done? And then I have to like be sad because I'm over it. And I was like, I've got 5 pages. I was so upset. I was like,
I feel like I binge watched a full season. It's like, oh, I should have slowed down. Maybe I should go back and relive some of that stuff again.
Oh man, that feels so. Thank you so much. Like, I'm so glad that you guys felt that way, and that was also part of the whole like Gorbis the Conqueror. Like, it was kind of a way to like, oh, I want people to like see what the next quote could possibly be. So like, you're honestly, I'm done, but I just want to see what the next quote is, and then like it hooks you in again. So that was the point of that as well. But like, I try to do that to hook people, and you guys seem to have been hooked. So thank you.
It's so funny. Gorbis the Conqueror is so much like Dune. Is so much like God Emperor being like, never over tip. You will learn the consequence. Like, it's very much like that. That's very Dune-ish.
If you read the book Dune, every chapter starts with the Book of Muad'Dib quote.
Right.
That's where I got it from. That's exactly where I got it from. Yeah,
that's a fabulous thing to bring into your universe, and fits in so wonderfully. All right, Taylor, take us home.
All right, let's take us home. Well, thank you all for joining us today. You can support our channel here on Patreon, at patreon.com, The Cultured Nerd. We have our handful of supporters. Credits here, myself being the host, Taylor Murphy, my co-host, Michael Santel, and our 10 supporters are listed there. Thank you all again for joining us. You can scan that QR code, follow us on social media, and you can support us how you like. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you, boys. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.